I burst into my apartment, my heart pounding and my mind reeling from the chaos of the night. Bastian's capture played on a loop in my head. The image of him lying wounded on the ground seared into my memory. I paced back and forth, my hands shaking as I reached for my phone. "I have to call the police," I said, my voice trembling. "We can't leave Bastian at the mercy of those bastards." My eyes watered, and I wasn't sure if it was because of Bastian or the allergy to his cat now sprawled all over my sofa. Regina's hand clamped down on my arm, her grip firm and unyielding.
"Amalia, stop. Think about what you're doing. We can't trust the authorities, not now. The people trying to bury the Voynich secrets are too powerful. Going to the cops will only paint a target on our backs."
I yanked my arm away, glaring at her. "And why the hell should I trust you, huh? You and your super secret librarian club waltz into my life out of the blue, and suddenly I'm supposed to believe every word you say? How did you even get access to that vault? And don't give me some cryptic bullshit, give me a straight answer." Regina's eyes flashed with impatience, but her voice remained infuriatingly calm.
"The FBI doesn't give a rat's ass about Bastian. He's a pawn, a way to get to you, to stop you from digging deeper. It's a classic move, straight out of their playbook. They did the same thing to Ethel Voynich and Elizebeth Friedman, threatened their husbands, told them they'd end up in a shallow grave if they kept poking around."
She began to pace, her voice taking on a bitter edge.
"Our sisters have been fighting this battle for centuries, Amalia, passing down scraps of knowledge through coded manuscripts and ciphers, watching as time erased the keys to unlock them. But we never stopped searching for the truth, never stopped trying to keep it safe from those who'd bury it forever."
I threw up my hands in frustration. "Then I'll blow the lid off this whole thing. I'll go to the press, call out the FBI and their pet conspiracy. I'll make sure the whole world knows what they're trying to hide." Regina let out a humorless laugh.
"And who's going to believe you? Without hard evidence, they'll rip you to shreds, paint you as some unhinged conspiracy nut, destroy everything you've worked for. And Bastian? He'll rot in some black site, never to be seen again. The only way to save him is to find the truth, to uncover proof that even the FBI can't deny."
I closed my eyes, my shoulders sagging under the weight of her words. As much as I hated to admit it, she was right. Going off half-cocked would only make things worse. I had to be smart, had to play the long game. "Fine, where do we start?" Regina swept a pile of papers off my dining table, replacing them with the encrypted letters and the battered copy of The Gadfly. She ran a finger along the book's spine, her eyes alight with a newfound intensity.
"If Elizebeth and Ethel were half as clever as I think they were, the key to cracking their code will be hidden in plain sight. We need to scour every page, look for anything that seems out of place or significant."
I nodded, already reaching for the letter. The handwriting was precise, almost mechanical, but the content was pure gibberish. It was going to be a long night. I tried to make sense of the seemingly random series of numbers scattered across the page. Each set of numbers was separated by dashes, like a code waiting to be cracked. As the minutes ticked by, the silence was broken only by the rustle of turning pages and the occasional muttered curse. My eyelids grew heavy, my mind dulled by the endless sea of meaningless symbols. But just as the first light of dawn began to creep through the curtains, I let out a gasp, my heart leaping into my throat. "The numbers," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "They're not just random digits. They're referring to specific locations within the book." Regina leaned in closer, her eyes scanning the page.
"Indeed, I suspected it was a book cipher."
I grabbed a pencil and began to jot down notes, my mind racing with possibilities. Look at the way the numbers are grouped. 3 numbers separated by dashes. It's a common format for book ciphers. The first number could represent the page, the second the line on that page, and the third the position of the word on that line. Regina's eyes widened with understanding.
"So, if we have a set of numbers like 10275, it would mean—"
"Page 102, line 7, word 5, I finished, a grin spreading across my face. "Exactly. Elizabeth and Ethel used the gadfly as the key to encode their messages. Each set of numbers corresponds to a specific word within the book. Regina nodded, a look of satisfaction crossing her features.
It's a simple yet effective way to hide sensitive information in plain sight. Only someone with access to the exact same edition of the book would be able to decipher the message.
I turned back to the letter, my finger tracing over the first set of numbers. Let's give it a try. The first code is 1222. That would be page 12, line 20, word 2 in the gadfly. I flipped open the book, my heart pounding with anticipation. At that moment, 2 loose pages dropped from inside it. I quickly scanned them. One was in code and the other was its translation. It was a letter addressed to Mrs. Friedman from a Ms. Moneycoats at Bletchley Park. I folded and slid it back inside the gadfly, as it didn't seem relevant to our pursuits. Then, I scanned the designated page 12 and line 20. My finger landed on the second word, and I couldn't help but let out a gasp. Regina looked at me, her eyebrows raised.
What does it say?
I swallowed hard, my voice trembling slightly as I read aloud the first word of the decoded message. Dear, it says, dear. I glanced at Regina and smiled. I turned back to the letter, my fingers trembling slightly as I began to decode the first line. As I worked my way through the text, the words began to take shape, revealing a message that had been hidden for decades. My heart pounded in my chest as I read the first sentence, my eyes widening with shock and disbelief. I turned to Regina, my voice shaking. You're not going to believe this, I said. It's a letter from Ethel Voynich to Elizebeth Friedman, and it's all about the Voynich Manuscript. But that's not the craziest part. Listen to this. I took a deep breath and began to read aloud, my voice echoing in the sudden stillness of the room.
My dear Mrs. Friedman, I hope this letter finds you in good health. I am writing to you at great personal risk to share a secret that I have long held close to my heart, a secret that, if revealed, could endanger both my life and that of my beloved husband. My mother, Mary Bull, was a remarkable woman, a self-taught mathematician and passionate advocate for women's education. After my father's untimely passing in 1864, she returned to England and became a librarian at Queen's College. There, she was initiated into a clandestine sisterhood dedicated to preserving the knowledge of an ancient civilization. From a young age, my mother told me stories of arcane manuscripts so powerful and transformative that men would go to unspeakable lengths to suppress them. These manuscripts, she said, held the key to a hidden realm of feminine light, abundance, and eternal virtue. But to reach this sacred place, one must undergo a purifying journey, traversing the river of life and partaking of sacred remedies that alter the very fabric of consciousness. Fearing for her daughter's safety in a world where men sought to erase these secrets, my mother was forced to publicly denounce the suffragettes while tirelessly advancing women's education behind the scenes. She often spoke of a vital force accessible only through moral living. Though she had not seen the manuscripts herself, she carried some of their ancient wisdom, pharmacopoeia, passed down orally, through generations of sisters. Central to this was an extract of a recipe for the kekion, a sacred psychedelic elixir used in the ancient Greek Eleusinian mystery rites honoring Demeter and Persephone. These revered rites were later condemned by Christians as they gained worldly power. The makeshift kekion, although incomplete, still had psychedelic properties and granted my mother a fleeting glimpse of the spirit realm. There she hallucinated images of ancient books, copies of even older texts, hidden away for millennia. Authorities, threatened by the idea of uniting science and spirituality, silenced these concepts and fired my mother from the library for daring to share even a fraction of these ideas in her writings. Yet she remained a sisterhood member until death, entrusting me to find the manuscripts she saw in her visions, a mission I have devotedly pursued. I too have been chased by those fearing these secrets. Even before my husband and I found the manuscript, I caught the attention of Scotland Yard's special branch. During this time, I became entangled with the notorious ace of spies, Sidney Riley. To be frank, I was never sure if his interest in me was genuine or if he was spying on me for his superiors. Our passionate, intriguing affair peaked during a memorable encounter in Florence. While his true feelings remain unclear, I cherish our time together. He even inspired the protagonist of my book, The Gadfly. Years later, upon finding one of the fabled manuscripts, I felt compelled to share what I knew with a like-minded soul. Though I cannot decipher it myself, I believe the manuscript contains a Kikion recipe and a sacred realm-accessing process akin to the Eleusinian mysteries. The illustrations likely depict the life-giving river and purifying journey to reach the abundant realm where Persephone lives contentedly with her sisters. But beware, this path is riddled with danger. Powerful forces will do anything to keep the manuscript's secrets hidden. Trust no one, not even those closest to you. You're now an ally in the quest for knowledge and truth. I will support you however I can, but I implore you, keep this letter absolutely confidential. Use my same cipher and tell no one of our correspondence. I await your reply eagerly. May ancient wisdom light your way. Faithfully yours, E.L. Voynich, 5th of July, 1944. P.S. Please accept the accompanying copy of my book as a token of my esteem. I suspect you may find the spy motif rather diverting.
As I finished reading the deciphered letter, my heart raced with excitement and trepidation. I then turned my attention to the copy of The Gadfly that had accompanied the letter. I marveled at Ethel's ingenuity in using the book as a key to the cipher, a clever nod to her own work as a novelist and a subtle way of authenticating the letter's contents. As I flipped through the pages of the novel, I felt a sense of kinship with Ethel, a woman who had risked everything to uncover the truth and preserve the legacy of her foremothers. I knew that I would have to be just as brave and just as resourceful if I hoped to follow in her footsteps and unlock the secrets of the Voynich Manuscript. My mind buzzed with questions and possibilities. The idea of a hidden realm, accessible only through a purifying journey and a sacred elixir, was both thrilling and daunting. I glanced over at Regina, who was watching me intently, her eyes gleaming with a mix of excitement and apprehension. "This is incredible," I breathed, my fingers tracing the edges of the letter. "But I still don't fully understand the connection between the Eleusinian mysteries and the Voynich Manuscript." Regina leaned forward.
The Eleusinian mysteries were a series of annual initiation ceremonies held in ancient Greece in honor of the goddess Demeter and her daughter Persephone. According to the myth, Persephone was abducted by Hades, the god of the underworld. Demeter, in her grief and anger, withheld her blessings from the earth, causing crops to wither and die. Eventually, a compromise was reached, and Persephone was allowed to return to her mother for part of the year, bringing with her the renewal of spring.
I nodded, vaguely recalling the story from my high school mythology class. "And what does this have to do with the manuscript?" I asked, my brow furrowed in concentration.
The initiates of the Eleusinian mysteries believed that by participating in the rites, they could achieve a deeper understanding of the cycle of life, death, and rebirth. Central to these rites was the consumption of a sacred elixir called the Kikion after fasting. Kikion was believed to induce an altered state of consciousness, allowing initiates to access hidden knowledge in spiritual realms.
My eyes widened as I began to connect the dots. So, Ethel believed the herbal and pharmaceutical folios in the Voynich Manuscript could contain recipes for similar psychedelic elixirs?
Precisely.
Regina said, a smile tugging at the corners of her mouth.
And that's not all. Take a look at these balneological folios.
I flipped through the pages, my gaze settling on the images of nude women bathing in interconnected pools, their bodies adorned with intricate headdresses. "What am I looking at here?" I asked, my fingers hovering over the strange, swirling designs.
These images could represent the purifying journey mentioned in Ethel's letter. The water flowing from one folio to another could symbolize the river of life that must be traversed to reach the sacred realm.
As I studied the images more closely, I felt a shiver run down my spine. Suddenly, Scully leapt onto the table, startling me out of my reverie. I sneezed violently, my eyes watering as I tried to push the curious feline away from the pages of the manuscript. Regina chuckled softly, reaching out to scratch Scully behind the ears.
Bless you,
She said, her eyes twinkling with amusement.
It seems Scully is just as eager to unravel the mysteries of the manuscript as we are.
I smiled weakly, wiping my nose on the sleeve of my jacket. Speaking of mysteries, I said, turning to the page that had caught my eye earlier. What do you make of this? 9 connected realms, each with its own unique symbology and design. Is this not the name of your secret cult? Regina flashed a cryptic smile.
It's hard to say for certain, but it could represent the different stages or levels of the spiritual journey that Ethel alluded to in her letter. Perhaps each realm corresponds to a different aspect of the purifying process or a different level of consciousness that must be attained.
I felt a rush of excitement and trepidation as I considered the implications of Regina's words. If the Voynich Manuscript truly contained the key to unlocking a hidden realm, a feminist utopia where knowledge and power were guarded and preserved, then the stakes were higher than I ever could have imagined. I became intrigued by the small clock face adorning one of the corners of the page with the 9 rosettes. I squinted my eyes in a hopeless attempt to decipher the glyphs around it. So, what do we do now? How do we even begin to decipher the rest of the manuscript, to uncover the truth behind this lost civilization? As Regina and I pored over the cryptic illustrations, trying to make sense of the 9 realms and their hidden meanings, a notification from YouTube jolted me out of my concentration. Bastian was streaming live. My heart leapt into my throat as a wave of conflicting emotions washed over me, concern for his well-being, yet battling with the still fresh sting of betrayal from our tumultuous past. With trembling fingers, I clicked on the link, bracing myself for whatever bombshell my erstwhile partner was about to drop.